So a little bit of background about WEI. I think most of the people I saw on the registration list have some exposure to WEI in the past, either from doing business with us or conducting services with us. But a little bit of background, we are about a 35-year young technology reseller integrator out based in the Northeast, specifically headquartered in Salem, New Hampshire. About 200 employees, about 220 now, I think. But one of the numbers we're very proud of is about 80 to 85 of those people are customer-facing engineers. So we put a lot of emphasis on having technical talent to serve the different technology disciplines that we focus on, including security. We are a privately owned company. We don't have private equity firms telling us what products to sell, what price to charge, or how to model our business. We control our own destiny. We do a lot of business in a lot of the very big accounts nationally and globally, as you can see from the second column there. But we also serve a lot of the mid-market across a lot of different technology disciplines as well. I'm selfish. I put cybersecurity at the top, but that is no means the only thing we do. We've got a very robust networking, data center virtualization practice, cloud practice, and we have certified talent across all of those disciplines. Our customers value working with us. They often award us with their Partner of the Year award, and we're recognized by partner organizations throughout the United States as being one of the top in terms of customer satisfaction and expertise. So a little bit about WEI. In terms of dialing the lens into our cybersecurity practice a bit, we looked at, when we expanded this practice recently, we looked at the talent that we had and kind of built the practice around the talent. And we came up with four main pillars loosely tied to the NIST framework that you see in the middle. The first is the upper right corner, zero trust and network security. Arguably, this is where we have our longest experience and deepest pedigree. We've been building and designing secure networks for 30 plus years. Our director of engineering likes to say we were doing zero trust before zero trust was a cool thing. But this is a big area of focus for us. A lot of focus on things like SASE today, microsegmentation, secure network design, network firewalls. Going down, SOC modernization. This was an area where we saw a lot of opportunity for improvement. A lot of companies and customers were buying the components of a SOC and then having marginal success stitching all those components together to deliver meaningful results. We've got some of the best expertise in the country right now on SOC design, automation, threat intelligence, threat hunting that we can bring to bear. Moving to the left, the shift left and shield right refers to our cloud security practice. Many of the customers we built data centers for in the earlier days of WEI naturally came to us and said we're ready for the migration to the cloud. And to address that demand, we hired a number of different people, real experts in the industry, to help people make that journey to the cloud. Asset management and risk management is the notion and the belief that if you don't have a single source of truth and a true inventory of all of your assets, your devices, your servers, your network gear, your users, your applications, your data, and have some understanding of the risk posture of those devices, you can't even get started with a robust security program. So we try to keep it, the program and the practice simple, but these four buckets tend to encompass much of what we do. Now, turning to Island, when we first engaged with these guys, thank you for that, John Fabio, for making the reach out. We took a hard look at their technology from a security perspective. And what struck all of us universally was that Island fits in every single one of these quadrants. So these guys will take you through a little bit of a discussion about the different use cases that they address, but it's expansive. The fact that when you control the security and the access from the browser, the most widely used application on the planet, there are so many security problems and challenges that you can solve. There are a lot of technologies that you can replace by implementing a secure browser out of the gate. And Island pioneered this space. So that's a little bit of background. If you guys have questions or would like to engage in the future after this webinar, please, I'll put my email in the chat as well, but shoot me an email. We'd love to continue this conversation. And frankly, I'm sure the Island folks would love to show you how this technology works in practice as well. So if there are any questions, throw them in chat, but I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to run you through what secure browsers and Island in specific are all about. Thank you. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Todd. All right, so I'm assuming that we have a nice, pretty green screen up there. Is that correct?
We do.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you very much. Good morning for those who are still celebrating or enjoying their morning. A quick introduction, Matt Poor, Sales Engineering Director here at Island. So I'll split this up in two different ways, but I do encourage you to use the chat function. We got a couple folks in there going to monitor that. So if there's anything I do not cover, you want addressed immediately, drop it in there. But with that being said, we'll run you through a quick presentation and provide everyone a nice foundation of what Island is, kind of like the who, what, where, why, and then I'll walk you through a quick demo from an end user perspective. But with that being said, Island itself has been in existence for almost 4 years, right? The two gentlemen on your left, Mike and Dan, have known each other for a while, but they've been in the industry for decades. So aggregate experiences both on the IT side and the InfoSec side of the house. But they came together in a previous life, great relationship, developed some solutions, and then they came together again to actually develop the platform that Island is today. And of course, they did their pitch like you would expect them to do with the folks on the right-hand side. So a lot of intellectual property, a lot of strong relationships there with our investors. And they developed Island, right? We've got this amazing solution, but what does it mean today? Where is it at today, right? In relation to just the overall picture. So Island today has nearly 300 customers, right? In our 4-year existence. And those 300 customers, they range everything from the small, medium business environments where Island is the primary solution, the environment to address both productivity and security needs, to being the primary browser, because that's what we're going to talk about here, to a multinational conglomerate hospitality company, as well as other companies. And we live everywhere in between that, every industry that's out there. And what this amounts to is more than 2 million browsers deployed with more than 250 employees supporting the solution and our customers. So with that, what are we here to talk about, right? So we're clearly here to talk about a browser, right? Secure browser, but we like to be known as enterprise browser because I think what you'll see is that this goes beyond the scope of security, although it's quite powerful. But the browser itself, right? It is the most commonly used application in your environment. You wake up with it, you go to bed with it. It is what the solution is designed to basically transport your data and give your employees access to the applications needs for the most part, right? As we evolve our application stack into modern day applications. But if you think about it, right, this solution that we use every day in the business is the exact same solution that your mom's using, right? She's checking out her recipes and she's, doing her craft, whatever it may be, but it's the exact same piece of technology, same code, same user experience, same everything. So there's some pros and cons in that. And if you really kind of think about it a little bit more, it's probably the only application in your environment that doesn't have a true support contract, right? So if something breaks in that browser, right, you're not going to be able to pick up the phone and talk to the Microsoft or the Googles of the world because they're just going to probably tell you to pound sand. So what have we done, right? What have we done? So if you've been doing this as long as I have, you probably started off with like an IDS, right, to inspect web-based traffic as well as other things on the network. But the notion is that over the past 20, 25 years, we have surrounded the browser with just a countless number of security agents, right? Outside it, doing unnatural things like SSL decryption to all the way inserting agents next to the browser to work with it, right? To provide the visibility and risk mitigation that we so much need in our environment as things have evolved. But on top of that, right, our brethren on the other side of the fence, information technology, I've lived and breathed it before, is that we have to provide access to the applications, right? And we do this a number of different ways, right? We augment the applications through things like application performance monitoring or RPAs to automate certain components, but they're working in conjunction with the applications and giving the users access or a better improved experience. At the same time, I've got a VPN infrastructure, I've got VDI and DAS and other capabilities that actually provide the access. But again, that common denominator is still the browser, right? I'm still working with the browser to get to the applications as well as have the visibility and the risk mitigation that needs to be occurring in the background. And then our end users actually kind of enter the picture, right? They can use a browser. And what they do is they want to include our productivity, right? We've told our users numerous times not to write your passwords down in a sticky note, right? So what have they done? They've gone and augmented their work experience by downloading extensions, password managers, PDF editors, right? Anonymization services, right? The whole 9 yards. And so what we have here is that we have this nice aggregate mess, this beautiful orchestra that we have to pull together to basically manage the browser itself. And the browser just ends up becoming a caged animal, right? We've basically deprecated a lot of capabilities just so that we can meet our requirements that the business desires. And so what this really amounts to is an innovation issue, right? We basically impact productivity, right? We've all dealt with browser updates or conflicts with updates. We have incompatibility issues with applications not necessarily working with them. Think about those legacy IE applications you still have and those plugins, right? They won't work with Chromium. You got to do some unnatural acts with extensions and other capabilities to make that work. Then we have to tell our developers that they have to develop their application support not only the browser itself, but also all the other ancillary technologies that we incorporate to try to make work with the browser. And ultimately, this just ends up slowing everyone down, right? Causes pain across the board to everyone. And so Island sought to solve this issue. And the place that we started, which seems like the most logical place, is the browser itself, right? It is the portal to our applications and our data. And this actually is made possible through the Chromium open source project, right? This is what Island is based on. Island is a Chromium-based browser. So from an end user perspective, it's no different than Edge or Chrome or Opera or DuckDuckGo or any of the browsers are based on the same open source platform, right? So the end user experience, the end user adoption is quite simple, right? Everyone here on this call is the IT guy or gal in their house, right? Someone's going to call you and say, hey, fix this issue for me. You're pretty smart. But if you think about the browser itself, no one really calls you and says, hey, how do I install Chrome? How does this thing work? How do I go surf the web and how do I download an extension? Right? It's pretty self-explanatory. There's very little friction in this. So we took all that goodness, 10 years of UAT testing, 5 billion users using the same piece of software every day. We took what works and works really well with that, right? The rendering engine, the whole 9 yards that you see on the screen, and we overlaid that with enterprise requirements, right? The enterprise is this is what a business needs, right? This is what an organization means, whether if you're working in the government, where you're working mom and pop, whether you're working with a Fortune 10 customer or company, this is your core requirements that you have to address typically, right? You have to identify the user, and that's where we start, enterprise trust. We integrate into your IDP. We become part of the sample chaining process. We participate in SSO. We actually will extend MFA where it needs to be extended, right? We are part of the authentication authorization process for that end user and accessing your applications and make it seamless, make it less friction for that end user. But identity is only of that user is only one side of that coin because the authentication piece is just who I am. I'm Matt, by the way, because I authenticated and I type in my password and I did this multi-factor piece. But my identity is also my device, right? So I can actually do device posture checking. So this is nice because if we talk about zero trust, that is the other side of the coin. We look into this standard is like, well, where's Matt coming from? His location, network, right? But more importantly, it is the device itself. Matt on his personal device is completely different than Matt on a managed device. And Island will address and distinguish that and enable the business to actually empower that type of usage. Now, there are a number of different bullet points up here, right? And what you'll see is that there is some overlap here. Todd pointed out to that. He said there are capabilities of rationalizing, consolidating, and Island replacing. And we like to believe that we can certainly perform those functions, but we also see this as purely table stakes, right? You should be able to do content filtering, DLP, CASB, anti-phishing, browser isolation. It should be native within the browser. It should be enforced within the browser, not a redirection to some technology in the cloud, or maybe you have to hairpin it back via VPN in your environment. These should be native functions and close to the user where there's less friction. But where Island really starts to distinguish itself is in this notion called last mile control. And simply put, if you think about it, once I give a user access to the data in the application or application in general, what can they do with the data, right? Can they copy it? Can they paste it? Can they download, upload, print, browser cast, screen capture, right? The list kind of permeates and goes on in terms of how data can move and how a user would access it. And so this is more of a contextual view, right? I know exactly what the end user is doing. So now I can start looking at this from a standpoint of not only do I look at it from like incident response inside a risk type of timeline, but then I can look at it from a UAT perspective, right? I have more intelligence. But with that visibility, I also can able to provide better dexterity in the controls. So now I can actually start saying yes, right? We all been in InfoSec for a long time. I've been in there for a long time. And no is a very common thing that we say, right? We're very risk averse people. So rather than say no, that I'm not going to allow you to access your personal mail or social media, or even tell the business no, because I don't have the necessary solutions that have API support or application integration to enable the business to onboard a new application. Now I can say yes. If it renders in a browser, and you can see it, Island can not only see it, but also can provide the controls that are necessary to enable the business to actually implement something and have day zero controls and visibility in place. Now, if I can do all this in terms of the end user's perspective, I can take it one step further with browser-based RPA, robotic process automation. RPA technology has been around for a while, automation type capabilities, very unique industry, but we've built that capability within the browser. And this is simply put, is beneficial for both the business as well as for InfoSec. So if I think about from an InfoSec standpoint, something as simple as data redaction is now a possibility. And think about that. The browser is in a unique situation. I see everything that's rendered to the end user before it's rendered to the end user. So if we're working in a call center, or I see sensitive information on the screen that is not authorized or shouldn't be there in the first place, I can actually replace the text. I can remove it, replace it with something else, right? But I can provide data redaction obfuscation where the end users cannot access it, or you can build a workflow for them to access completely auditable, right? Based upon any sort of attribute that you need for that access to occur. But if I can do this with the rendering of the browser, so I give you this beautiful canvas and you paint the way you want, now I can start to actually insert watermarks. I can actually change content where I can actually deliver RBAC where RBAC does not exist. I can do multi-factor step-up authentication for sensitive or privileged actions within any sort of console or application that may be necessary. We've all been in this situation where multi-factor is now required for all our applications for administrators. Well, not everything supports multi-factor. Island makes that possible. But if I can take this a step further into the productivity realm, right? I can actually automate data movement for your employees. I can reduce the number of clicks by giving them beautiful clipboard managers so they can copy content over without having to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I can give them the password manager, the PDF editing, the screen captures, all these tools that they typically download from an extension standpoint built into the browser. And so if I take all these capabilities and I'm putting them together, where do we actually start to help our customers? And a lot of times it's a journey, right? We have a lot of folks will come in and say, hey, look, I really would like you to start with my third parties, my unmanaged devices. And it's actually an easy place for everyone to start because typically you're providing them a laptop. You're typically providing a VDI instance. You're typically providing some ability to access your environment, maybe even like a VPN agent and a security stack like SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or whatever it may be. And you say, hey, you run this, you can access my environment. It's so much easier to say, hey, look, I need you to download the Island browser. You'll authenticate it with your IDP credentials. And then Island's a bastion host only for those applications, only for the data. They can't pull it down to their system. They can't move it laterally within the browser or other applications that are authorized. The data is watermarked, so it's protected in the sense that they want to pull out their phone. They certainly can do that, but then their name's all over it, which is not a very pleasant experience if it's shared. But the notion is that I can onboard a third-party unmanaged device, do the posture checking, validate it meets minimum security requirements in minutes. I'm not waiting on laptop shipping. I'm not waiting on issues. And it's not persistent. It's not a persistent agent that's always runs. When you're done with work, you just close it down like any other browser and it installs in a user space. So even your mom can install it. Given that, because it's platform independent, supports a variety of different operating systems, this allows me to actually start to address needs within the business, the critical applications, right? If the finance department is moving from one application or expense management to another, it's a day zero access. I just pop in the new application, the controls are already in place, the visibility is already in place. If I want to automate the validation of invoices, and I have a human element in there that basically has to modify and validate a PDF file, I want to make sure that customer number matches what the automation tool is, like maybe in ServiceNow. And if it doesn't match, don't allow that to go through. I can prevent data disclosures with human error type situations through the automation of the browser. If I look at this more from a standpoint of VDI reduction, which is typically a fairly large beast, the easiest area that we help people is reducing the number of web applications. Like, great, it's a web browser, right? You should be able to do web browser. So not only can I actually provide the access, the visibility, the user attribution, all your controls that you typically would have, but I can also provide the access capability back inside your environment. Zero trust network access is built into the Island browser. No need for VPN, no need for reverse proxies, no need for ICA clients. It's all built in the Island browser. It's a one-stop shop for your end users. No confusion, no fire up agents, no change control processes, no additional binaries to patch anymore. But then I could take it a step further. Everyone here, privileged users, you guys all have to use SSH. You all have to use RDP. Island can provide those capabilities built into the browser so that privileged users can now access the consoles from the seat of their couch, right? You have an outage situation, install Island, I'm on board. You have a situation where you have ransomware knocking out everyone, code red. It's super easy to install Island on any machine, have the gates in place, and onboard all those individuals that are working in the call center that a ransomware just took out. So bring their business back online less than 24 hours. Incident response will take care of incident response, but at the end of the day, Island can come in and insert itself not only in your business processes, but give you the ability to say yes and give you the ability to actually optimize the end user experience while security is behind the scenes, as it should be, being very, very effective. So with that being said, this is an excellent stopping point. I would take questions, but I think what we might want to do is just jump straight into the demonstration. Todd, is you good with that?
I'm fine with it, absolutely. Yeah, but feel free again to use the chat as well. I see a few chats are coming in. We'll keep an eye on those, but just leave a few minutes at the end and we can go through these.
100%. I saw one of them off the bat already.
All right.
Well, let me just knock out this real quick and I'll reshare. Here we go. Now, I am sure everyone can see the WEI enterprise browser. Great. Awesome. Right. So this is familiar look, right? You can see clearly it's a browser. I'll just move around on my screen here. But it does look different, right? It's branded, and it should be branded, right? We're running a business here. I have employees. I have a sense of pride. I want some familiarity with my employees when we could think of social engineering manipulation, things like that. So I know that this is the work browser, right? This is my business portal. Now, from an end user standpoint, we're going to automate them from a managed device standpoint, we'll automate them and pull that PRT record and they'll authenticate to the browser. Now, if this was an end user who needed to, it's like a contractor or a BYO type situation, well, it's super easy. It's super easy to enable yourself, right? They'll get an email, or you'll tell them to go to your Okta portal or your Azure and just click on the icon to download the browser. And what that might look like would be something like they would click on download, they go download Island.io, and you certainly could do this right now. And once they authenticate, this would be the end user experience. Now you'll notice here that they'll know for a fact, yeah, this is the WEI. It's clearly where I need to go and download the browser. So there's an explicit amount of trust here. Automatically knows the operating system, but you'll see here that I support other platforms, right? All your mobile platforms, Chromebooks, iGel, Stratodesk, right? Some of these purpose-built operating systems, but also, of course, Windows and Mac and Linux, right? So we cover everyone in terms of supporting their device so that they can, be enabled to work, right, at the end of the day. So once it's installed, because we've all installed Chrome before, they'll create their profile and authenticate, and that's it. Now they're part of the family. Now, when they log in, this is purely an example of the portal that we can set up for them. Now, there are some different attributes here I'll share with you. Now, clearly, if I look at it from just is this really a Chromium browser? Well, you see it is. And if I go over here, something like passwords and autofill, you say I disable the passwords capability. So you still have control and still have governance over the browsers you expect, but from an user perspective, right, they can install their own extensions and they can import their bookmarks, right? So the user experience is all there. Now, if I look at this is quite interesting because the first thing I'll point out is the WE apps. I'm pulling this from Okta. I can pull it from Azure via API, but the nice thing is I can publish your applications, what they're entitled to right off the bat. So everyday applications are right here, what I'm entitled to. I have some infrastructure services that I'm going to pull back in through that ZTNA capability. And then I look at it from a standpoint of like, well, there's some other applications. Like I have my Azure virtual desktop published on my browser. So again, I have one place to go to get to all my applications, and I can even customize. So if the user goes to WEI, we hit the homepage, you'll notice that it renders and everything kind of works fairly well, right? It's very quick, very fast. And the reason why is because first and foremost, as an enterprise browser, we don't have all that consumer telemetry in there, right? I'm not spying on you like Microsoft and Google do. I removed all that. And the other thing that's built in here, quite simply, is an ad blocker, right? So in this particular instance, I'm pretty much invisible to WEI. I'm removing all those different ads and everything else, but that also improves the overall user experience. And I'll kind of point that out here in a moment in a different website. It's a little more effective. But the end user themselves are starting to understand that through communication, through end user indicators, I may change the user experience. I can communicate it here or even a pop-up. I can also start to tell them what is occurring, right? So this particular website here, I'm going to monitor, and I have some security capabilities behind these things that are protecting them. But at the end of the day, everyday web surfing is pretty good, right? Now, if they were to shift gears and go somewhere that could be non-business related, well, different user experience. I'm gonna do some browser enforcement locally, right? No proxy involved. You got some categorization going on. That's how I'm looking at this, but it's a bump page, right? So that user's going to click continue. But what you'll notice is that it's personal and I'm not logging. It's completely private. I really don't want this in my logs. There's no business in there. Now, you certainly can make it anonymous if you want. So you can just not log the user information, identifiable information, and log the content itself. But at the end of the day, very clean experience. Now, what you'll notice here is very interesting. I mentioned about telemetry. Well, this is an example of an RPA, robotic process automation. This is a floating box, right? This is not part of Forbes. And what I'm doing is I'm actually letting you know some of the digital experience, the UAT performance, right? So we know that this site runs 26 megs. Now, there was a question as to how do we compare from a performance standpoint if I'm doing all this in the browser? And actually, I'm quite awesome. I'm doing content filtering. I'm doing data analysis. I'm doing isolation right now in this content. Now, if I was just to pull up Chrome, for example, and you'll see here's Chrome, different modality, right? Chrome browser. And I have the Island extension in there. Now, so we have part of the platform is multiple ways that Island can be deployed, and Crawl Walk Run approach will handle that in different modalities. But with that, let's go to Forbes, right? Same user experience, right? This looks great, appropriate use warning, right? And then go ahead and click continue. And the user experience is typically like this, right? It's still loading. And now we start to insert information that we particularly don't really care about, right? This is not really pertinent to what I want. Not a very good user experience. So users want to use Island. But what you'll notice here is importantly is like, well, performance standpoint, right? 70 megs versus 26. That's a huge difference. Number of requests is down 169 to 45. So there is a huge difference. And this is what a consumer browser do. They run unnecessary APIs or run unnecessary telemetry. But this is table stakes, right? This is just improving the everyday user experience. What's really important to the business is access and visibility into the applications. So let's run in there, right? Let's go to Salesforce. It's one we like to pick on. Now, normally I'm going to push the SAML credential right on in. Everything works great. Users authenticated, and I'll show that in a bit. But I love to pause because there's always more than one way to get a user into an application. So I can integrate with a Vault and do privileged access, user attribution on a shared based account. Think about break the glass type stuff. I also have built-in zero-knowledge password manager that basically hones or uses the TPM as well as a JWT to identify with the user. And so I have multiple ways to get a user into an application outside of your SAML or your IDP, your SSO workflow. But let's just go ahead and pop on in here, right? We get into there, and the end user is going to do what they normally do. Now you'll see that this website here is monitored, right? And Forbes is still not being monitored. So I can carry that at the same time with the same browser. And I'll just jump into some place that's meaty with data. So this is a representative of any application. It can be any SaaS-based application, IaaS, can be internal-based application. So this is just a good example. And as you notice here, I have some PII up here, right? User information, right? Typically, all right, that's okay. And then we scroll down a little more, and now we have some sensitive information like credit card data, right? An employee may not need access to this, or maybe a customer entered that in the field when they're not supposed to, right? So that makes it a bit sensitive. And then lastly, some objects that are embedded in the application, which is a great example. Now, an end user can easily just turn around and, we could turn around and just come over here and take the credit card data. And because I have access, I can easily just copy it on out, right? Or even better, I can just pull out my phone and take a picture of it, right? So I have the information, data can move around, normal stuff. So this is where Island can actually start to provide a better user experience while protecting the data, while protecting the business. And so if I look at this, I'm just going to treat my system as an unmanaged device. And so I've oriented the application, and we're all sitting here, and it's kind of a slow day. So I'm going to fire up Steam, but I got to disable my firewall in order to play video games on my work machine. So I'll go ahead and disable my firewall. Posture checking is going to come on in and play here. So I click OK. All right, firewall's disabled. And on refresh, every click, Island is looking at device posture checks. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and we'll refresh the page. And what you'll notice is that there's a slight change, just a slight subtle change. And all I've really done is I didn't kick the user out, which is a horrible user experience, is I actually just watermarked the content, WEI, right? I'm letting the user know that this is the WEI information. But I've also indicating this is an unmanaged device, and certain functions will be deprecated. Now, we don't want to kick users out. We want to enable them. We want to enable them to come from any device. So if that user decided to go ahead and save some content, right? Well, it's a gentle reminder that the content's not going to be saved out, right? It's a fairly basic control. What happens if they wanted to print? Well, in this particular instance, different user experience. I'm going to give them a little warning. Maybe Matt's authorized to print content, but I can customize the messaging, right? We can do that at will and for any situation. And I can ask Matt for a reason, right? So, I need to, right? Fairly basic stuff. And he submits some prints, and here we are. Now I can control where that data actually flows to. I can actually disable local printers. Again, because I'm the browser, I can render anything I want and remove anything I want. And you'll notice that that physical security comes on through. So if I do print it, a watermark is there. Now, of course, I can watermark any content as I see fit with anything, and I'll kind of give you an example of that in a bit. Now with that, so I'm in the application, and if I scroll back down, you'll notice immediately that the credit card information has been redacted, right? There's no API, no tokenization, Salesforce, fill in the blank application is none the wiser. I know the information is here. I recognize it through the RPA, through a module that says, look for this information. It can be anything that you want and redact it. Now, I may be authorized to unredact it. So I built in a workflow. Now, this is a self-approve workflow. So I can say, need to confirm with John, right? On the phone. Again, I click show me, cancel this. There we go. The data is now available for me to confirm with John. This is purely optional. I can integrate this into your ServiceNow or any sort of workflow platform you have if you want additional approval. It's fairly straightforward, and it's on-demand type of changes. There's no use, no operation requirements from you. And so with that, now I can show the information. It can be re-redacted. It can time out your permutations of how you want that data being manipulated is all there. So I've started to establish a data boundary, which is important. I want the data to stay within the application, but we all know that data needs to flow outside the application for authorized uses. So if I copy the case number here and I drop it in the application, that is a completely normal function, right? That's what the end user is supposed to do, move data within the application. But if I want to move the data outside the application to this untrusted device now, as I did before with that credit card information, I copied it and pasted it. In this particular situation, because I don't trust the device, I'm not allowing that data to be copied on out. So I established this data boundary to basically say it's truly staying there. It's like, I love Matt, but I don't trust his device. So we've established the fact that nothing's going down to his device. But if I turn around and I'm like, well, I really need to work on this at home, so I'm just going to email this myself. All you guys are great. IT shop. You finally let me access my personal Gmail. So fine, I'm going to go compose the message, drop it in here. And again, I don't trust the application. And in this particular instance, I shouldn't trust that because it's your personal Gmail. Now, if we were a GPC shop, I would be able to distinguish GPC corporate versus GPC personal or even Gmail personal, right? Because I am the termination point. I see everything. I don't have to worry about SSL decryption. And I am tenant aware. Now, with that, okay, great. Can't do that. So I'll just email it to myself and our sanctioned email platform, which is Office 365. Push the user on in, SSO is all great, but you'll notice that watermark exists, still a corporate unmanaged device. So that data boundary now has become an application boundary. I have a trust between these two applications. So if I drop the data here, that is normal workflow. I should be able to do that. That makes data protection so much easier. But I still have all those traditional DLP, capabilities, detection engines like signatures and EDM and OCR built in for object analysis. But with last mile controls, it makes it far easier for the business to make a decision on trust. So come back over to Salesforce. I've got my email up. And so now I need to follow up with one of the contacts. So I go to Mr. Paul Davison. In this particular instance, I want to do an email merge. I'm going to do some sort of function to communicate with them. So I have this beautiful clipboard manager. I want to enable my users. Now you'll notice I've copied a bunch of clips. So you can see that partial credit card number. You can see my PIN clipped up here for the case number. In this particular instance, I want to grab all of Paul's information. So this is where we can start to actually benefit the user with automation. So if I go to details here, I want to grab all his information and drop it over here in a smart clip. And by dropping over in a smart clip, I actually reduce the number of clicks. So now I can pop over here to Office and I can go ahead and it's like, oh, great. Now I can start dropping information into the application and not have to worry about any sort of human error or going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Super easy for the end user, very beneficial. Now, if I go shift gears back to go to my personal email, you'll notice that the data disappears, right? The clipboard manager understands data sovereignty. He knows where it came from. So you'll notice that the majority of my clips are gone because they should not be in my personal applications, much less accessible. So I've really started to improve Matt's overall experience. I give him access. I have him boot him out of the application. But the last thing that Matt needs to do in here is access this financial report here. Now, an Excel file, it should render fine within Salesforce, but it doesn't, right? That's a horrible user experience, right? They're going to download it. You know they are. So if I go and download it because I want to look at it, you guys are going to block it. But we don't want to do that, right? We want to enable them. So I'm going to give them the option, dump it in OneDrive because that's our sanctioned location. They can do that in the browser. Or, hey, let them use secure storage. Solves two major problems, right? It's rendered in memory in the browser, and I give the user the beautiful user experience of actually seeing the file as an Excel file, right? All the numbers come across, everything's rendered properly. And I even have the pretty pictures for those who do not understand numbers. But secondly, I can do the editing within the file. And by editing this, now I have a closed loop process, not only to view the files and edit the files, I don't even have to shift them off to their own endpoint system. I don't have to shift them to any sort of productivity tools. They can actually come back into the application and then re-upload the file from, again, the sanctioned location of the secure storage and dump it back in there, right? No interruption whatsoever in their everyday workflow, but yeah, all my controls are in place. Now, we've all been in this situation, sitting on a Zoom and someone mistakenly shares something they shouldn't share, right? So that's going to show that right now. I'll go over here to my sensitive new contacts, right? Got all my customer lists. Y'all going to take a look at it and I open it up. And as I share it, right, the information is sitting on the screen, but for some reason you guys can't see it because Island as a browser can talk to the operating system and take advantage of the DRM controls. So I can truly prevent someone from taking a screen capture, right? If I pull up my snipping tool, this is the end user experience. It's just going to look like this. And by seeing this, they're like, well, great, I can't take a screen capture. Same thing applies to Zoom, Teams, and everything else. Now, as in life, there's an exception to everything. And so I can go over here and pull up an exception. You guys are IT, you're going to help me out and solve this problem. And then the content is here, it's available. Now, this is a different user experience. I would not want this user experience on the application, right? But in this sensor report, I want to remind Matt not to take a picture. He can certainly pull out his phone and take a picture, but he's going to capture his name. I got a QR code that has all his information on his device embedded in there. I even going to only expire the content in 3 days because really this is an exception within the application for him to view this report. He's not even supposed to have access to it. So we just gave him an exception. So this content will expire. But at the same time, though, with the watermarks and everything I have in place, I can also benefit Matt because maybe he's onboarding. Maybe this is a new report to him and he needs some additional information and guidance. Maybe he needs to open up a support ticket. And I can build in the RPA to allow Matt to access other content that's just not native within the application itself. And so with that, I've provided Matt all the access that he needs to these critical applications, give him all the necessary controls that the business needs in order to protect the data so it stays where it needs to stay, but I'm not adversely impacting his everyday work. And if I look at this more from the context of everyone on the phone, everyone's probably thinking, well, this is really great for the end user, right? I give them access and they've got a good work experience. Well, what about me? What is it in for me? So if we think about the everyday admin, right? I want to give you access to all your consoles. I want to provide the same level of access and control. Most of those consoles are either SaaS or internal, right? There's kind of a good split. So if I pop in as an admin to like an ESX server, for example, really old, you'll notice that again, I have the same watermark. I'm also doing my privileged access because I shouldn't know the root password. It's sitting in a password vault, but Island can provide it. Can provide all your session monitoring, right? Your screen captures, your mouse clicks, and your keyboard strokes. So we have a PAM, right? Session monitoring capability. So I fill this in, but at the same time, I do have that policy in place. I got to do a multi-factor, right? It's required now, and the ESX won't support it. So now I can do either web auth in, so touch, hello, right, FIDO keys, or we can just go old school and just use authenticator code as part of our Azure or Okta or Duo or whatever it is that we use. And then I'll go ahead and just type in my authenticator code, and it's all audited, right? I got Matt in the application. I know he did two-factor. I know he's using the credential of root password. It's all logged. We know that Matt's using root, and he logs in. And once Matt's in there, y'all recognize this. Yeah, that looks like ESX. So if I come over here and try to copy the information out, right? It's nothing sensitive, but just a pure demonstration. You'll notice, whoops, if I can pull up there we go. We pull this up, you'll have the same level of control, but the application boundary can be completely different. So if I come back over to, Salesforce here, for example, I can drop it in there. No big deal. I don't really care. I just don't want Salesforce data going back over there. So if I copy the facilities here and go to ESX, whoops, here we go. Close this down and drop it right there in search. Facilities works. So in this particular instance, I didn't capture that from that particular report, but the general application, I have the boundary right there, and the report I did not. But the notion is that your boundaries can be set up any shape, form, or fashion that you want, and it'll flow as you need to. But if I'm over here in this web-based application, what about those guys who got to go access secure shell? And that's built into the browser as well, right? So we pop in here. You'll see that I'm doing the privileged access. I'm providing the credentials on behalf of Matt, full shell. If I don't want Matt removing directories, I can basically prevent him from using the remove command. But at the end of the day, he has the full session monitoring, including recording of his SSH session. But he also can move files back and forth with FTP built into the browser. And again, you'll notice that this is an internal address base, no VPN will fire it up. But I can go a step further because I'm a Windows guy and I need to do RDP because I got to go check out a server, do some patching, check it out. Again, user experience is slightly different. I can drop in the IP I want. I can actually do a jump server with privileged hosts already defined, or I can define my own because I set it up that way. But when I do the connection, right, you'll notice that it's a fast user experience. It renders quickly. Everything that is needed is there. But at the same time, maybe I need to go ahead and access some PowerShell. I can certainly do it from here, but in the PowerShell type instance, I may need to do an Azure. So I need my full Azure desktop. I can fire up my full Azure desktop, get into there. Everything will render. Again, you're seeing the last mile controls. So all the user attribution, the controls of the last miles of copy, paste, print, what have you, are all present right here. And if I didn't want Matt to have a full session desktop, but I really just need him to be able to access just, an Excel client, I can fire that up too, right? Everything's rendered in the browser. Everything's easy for him to use. Any application that we publish in that Citrix AVD environment, all accessible in one spot for Matt. So the end user experience is super great, right? Works well. Everything renders fine. We can fire it up, get it going. And at the end of the day, though, from an end user perspective, works well, right? Good experience. From an admin perspective, right, our console's hosted in the cloud, SaaS-based, reporting is there, but the reporting can live locally. You can see that this very informative information up front, all the reporting up at the top, but I can dig into modules, right? We have multiple modules that kind of formulate here. really just for like, network access, like the IPA component piece or maybe the password manager, but everything you've seen thus far is part of the base browser with the exception of the IPA and the password manager. But at the end of the day though, what really happened, right? What was going on with that end user? Because I'm the admin. So I'll take a closer look at the logging. And because, Matt was pretty much not unauthorized, but untrusted device, we stepped up our logging quite a bit. And but what you'll notice here, though, is that this is fairly similar to perimeter-based logging, right? I got identity, I have applications, URLs, but where things get a bit interesting is right here, is the actual end user interface. What are they actually doing with the application? Now, I will start off from the beginning of the ESX. We'll pop in there. And you guys remember getting to ESX. So when we go in there, we'll load up the logging capability. Now, this can dump into your SIM or your own stores like S3 or Snowflake or something like that. But you'll notice that I'm grabbing a screenshot. I wanted to, Matt went to this page that looks pretty normal. He's navigating there. And as we kind of click through the different screens as I'm going, this is when the step-up authentication was requested right here. And then if I look at the step up completed, again, it was completed. But if I take a closer look at my log details, you get your typical perimeter security type logs, right? We know it's Matt working here. He's from Alabama today, and he's accessing these applications. He still hasn't been granted access to the private access. But if I look at the additional details, you can see that there was a success in the step up authentication. So audit, check mark, done. And again, he hits the app access and he gets into the application. Keystrokes, little asterisk, which is this right here on the screen. And if I dig again to the application, now you see that Matt is clearly within the environment. And when he's in the environment, we take a closer look at the additional details and we see exactly where he is and that we know there's a keystroke event and that information will end up in your SIM. And again, if I continue kind of going a little bit further, now we know that Matt actually clicked on the screen. He's logging in with that root password. Know for a fact that is, I got that visual confirmation. And again, I peeled back that onion a little bit more, additional details. You'll see here, again, we're still copying the same information. This is a very quick run through of Island Enterprise Browser. And so it leaves us with about 10 minutes to answer any questions. I could spend another hour on this, but with that, we only have an hour. So let me help you guys out with any questions that weren't answered by Mr. Patrick Mayer. I think Patrick might have got them all. Citrix is coming. Yeah, so someone asked, when is Citrix coming? So Citrix will be available. I'm looking at November right now, no later than November. The ICA client or the ICA piece is proven a little more challenging, but we're committed to getting it done. So I should have Horizon, Citrix, AVD, RDS is already supported, Azure, AWS is already supported. But those 5 major platforms will be completed no later than the end of the calendar year from integration perspective.
Matt, there were a couple of questions about sort of the anti-malware capabilities of the platform. More broadly, are you guys, I don't think you're making the statement that this mitigates the need for endpoint technology. This is really securing the browser experience, things that happen within the browser, right?
It does. It does. So I have that key advantage where I'm not, I don't have to execute any content on the system itself. So if you have a user like me who likes to go to malware repositories, for example, and if I go pull down some ransomware and I prefer Annabelle, if I pull down this raw file, right, that's the executable is going to be powered down, right? So from an Island perspective, I'm going to look at this content before it even touches disk. And so I have 2 ways of doing this. I can either integrate with your existing environment or you use our malware scanner. So this is a cloud assist component. It's probably one of the only pieces that you'll see. But clearly right here, I'm using my integration. So I have an integration with CrowdStrike. If I pop back in over here to my modules, excuse me, you'll see here, there we go. Go to system settings. And right off the bat, I have the integration with the CrowdStrike. Basically, any solution that has an API, we can pop in here. What you see here is just the items that we built the UI out for, but I've done with other vendors. So I'm not in the business of replacing your EDR, your EPP stack. However, I'm here to complement them and actually provide more visibility because I will participate in the IOC, IOB exchange of information and what have you. But yes, I definitely will look at it.
the customer needs to be licensed to CrowdStrike. That's not a
Or
freebie.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, we're just extending what you already have. So if you want to do Sentinel-1, CrowdStrike, Defender, to us it doesn't matter, right? We want to leverage what you already have, or maybe you want a third party, then you certainly go get a license for it.
Great. Getting a bunch of new messages here. Are you seeing the messages coming in?
Yeah.
Hey,
So
Matt,
examples of
the RPAs.
The RPAs. Yeah.
I just think it's easier to show that than type it out.
Yeah. I'll give you an out of box one that's fun. So here, pop over here. So we all talk about applications and access to applications. I'm assuming you guys are looking at my browser again, right? Yep. Is that correct? Good. So let's go to X, right? We all have an X account. Everyone here works for a business that has a social media platform. So first and foremost, a lot of people have that password. That's a privileged account, right? I can do some serious damage if I'm disgruntled or human error. So when I sign in, right, here we are. User attribution. Don't need to share those accounts anymore. I'll go ahead and fill this in. And here we go. Informing the user that they only have read access, no input allowed. So we'll go ahead and get them logged in though. Refill it. Here we go. Come on, we can do it. There we go. And users logged in, right? RBAC, or where it does not exist, this is a perfect example. I'm gonna go ahead and click right here. Hopefully there's nothing inappropriate, but at the end of the day, what you'll notice is that all the icons up here are gone, with the exception of a scheduled tweet, right? Scheduled tweet makes no use for me at the end of the day, but this is all done through an RPA. The RPAs can be written by you. It's JavaScript, right? This is a custom RPA. In this particular instance, all I'm doing here is basically saying, hey, if you see these icons in the DOM, remove them. More importantly, though, you'll notice right here that I've removed the ability to modify the admin account. So the RPAs are just, you can do as many things you want to manipulate the DOM. If I went back over here to the Salesforce sensitive page, right, this is out of the box. This is a custom RPA. This is out of the box. This is out of box. So there's a lot of capabilities that you have, but that's a good example of this is very customized. But at the same time, it only takes a matter of minutes because you can use generative AI that's built into the browser to help you write the RPA, and then you just do the final bits. Any other questions I'm missing?
There's a
Patrick?
few.
Yeah, I was just checking one on the OCR capabilities real quick, but I've got the answer here. So
okay,
just to talk about it while I'm on here for the OCR capabilities, we will make best effort to try to flip that document around, take a look at it. But I'll get that answer posted in chat here for you too.
On the PAM piece, video capabilities does exist for SSH. For web-based and RDP, it's currently screenshots. Those screenshots, I think, are taken 6 screenshots per minute, roughly. We do have the capability to build, or I'll call it the art of the possible, for video capabilities of web and RDP. We're just waiting for our customers to say, hey, it's a requirement, but we know how to do it.
Here. Oh, we got one more new one. Oh. PII embedded in a video. That's an interesting one. Something's up on a bulletin board.
Yeah. So so image recognition we certainly do. I don't know if we really encountered video in terms of a use case. We probably want to handle that a bit different. So yeah, that's a very interesting. I would probably want to take that offline, Billy, right, and how we would solve that type situation. I would personally look at that more from a standpoint of, if we know that that's a situation, we probably would want to obscure the video from just the video itself rather than the content, or not content, but the website. I think there might be a couple different ways that we can mitigate that, even maybe possibly watermarking it. So it depends on how we would want to look at that one. But definitely with the images, OCR, video, that's a different beast.
Right.
Now, here's the interesting thing, though. If you're looking at putting malware into a video, because that's a binary execution, right? The browser will see that, and we will stop that, right? So We do have a lot of anti-tampering capabilities from an end user perspective, as well as a third party. So think of like attack vectors, right? They're attacking the browser itself and or through the operating system or through the end user context. But when there's a video that has embedded scripts in there or access to binaries that is making the call via the browser, it's going to hit the DOM, and we'll be able to analyze that before the end user touches it, much less the operating system. So in that particular situation, we actually will look at it before it even touches the presentation layer, which then once it touches presentation layer, then it hits the browser and the browser hits the operating system. So the browser itself has a very interesting architecture that allows us to have multiple areas of inspection. So even if the end user was to open up a phishing scam and they were to type in their password or something like that, we could prevent the password from even hitting a put or a post. But with code execution, we can actually leave it only in the presentation layer and never have access to the operating system. That's how our isolation works.
Hey, Matt, you have a good talk track around the why doesn't MS or Chrome already do this type of thing in Edge or Chrome?
Yeah, yes. Well, Microsoft has been announcing it, right? So both solutions have excellent management platforms. But if you look at it just from the core standpoint of the browser itself, right, they're not going to change the development of their browser because they would have to strip out all the consumer stuff in order for it to fit in the enterprise. But the reason why they don't do this is I think a lot of it's going to end up doing with antitrust. I mean, just look what happened with Microsoft with Teams and how they had to separate Teams out. All right, Google's having similar issues with some of their items. But at the end of the day, it's I hate to say this, but it's if I go to the enterprise and say I can strip out your biggest ad revenue, your biggest revenue source, which is ads, they're not going to do that. And thus all the controls and everything else that would put in place that would actually deprecate their other business lines of business is not really going to occur. So they're going to do, I think, as much as they can and kind of check the boxes. But at the end of the day, it's not purpose built, and I don't think it ever